the last dance of Akosua. The sun was setting over the village of Abosomkese, casting long golden shadows over the hills and the old thatched roofs of the village homes. It was in these final hours of the day that the village came alive with the music, laughter, and the echoes of the past. In the center of it all stood Akosua, a woman whose name was known far and wide. Akosua, now in her mid-50s, was the heart of the village's dance tradition. Her feet had graced every festival. Her hips swayed to every beat, and her smile had captivated the community for decades. She had been the embodiment of grace and strength, the queen of the dances that told the stories of their ancestors. But now her body no longer obeyed her the way it once did. She had aged, her joints stiffened, and though her spirit remained untamed, her body was beginning to betray her backstory. Akosua's story began when she was just a young girl, the daughter of Essie and Kofi, the best dancers in Abosomkese. From the moment she could walk, her mother taught her the traditional dances, rhythms that connected the living to the spirits of their ancestors. The drum beats, the movement of the dancers, it was as if the earth itself spoke through them. Akosua had always been different. While other children learned to dance for festivals, Akosua danced as if her feet were guided by something deeper. She became the village's star at a young age, and by the time she was in her 20s, she was considered the greatest dancer to have ever lived in Abosomkese. People traveled from neighboring villages to witness her dances, to see how she moved as if the wind itself carried her. The turning point, but that was years ago. The years had not been kind to Akosua's body. The old bones that once moved with perfect fluidity now creaked, and the energy she once had was hard to summon. The younger women in the village, like Ya and Ifua, had begun to take the spotlight at festivals, their hips moving effortlessly to the rhythms of the drums, while Akosua's steps had slowed. Her daughter, Afia, noticed it first. Afia, who had been trained by Akosua herself, had now become a dancer in her own right. But she did not share her mother's passion for the dance. Mama, Afia said one evening, her voice soft but filled with concern, you need to rest. The village needs to see the new generation rise. You have passed on everything to us. But Akosua was not ready to accept this. Rest, she scoffed. The dance is my soul, Afia. I will not sit down while my heart is still beating. The struggle. Despite her daughter's plea, Akosua continued to dance in secret, practicing alone under the moonlight in the village clearing. But each time she danced, the stiffness in her legs grew worse. The pain that used to be a whisper now became a shout. Yet she pushed on, determined to show the villagers that she still had it. One evening, the village elders gathered for a meeting, and Akosua overheard them speaking about her. Akosua's time is up, Elder Kwame said with a sigh. She's too old now. We need to move forward. It's time for the younger women to take charge. Akosua overheard, and the words stung. She felt her heart tighten, her pride pricked. She had spent her entire life for the village, and now it seemed they were ready to forget her. The festival, the annual Abosomkese Harvest Festival, was approaching. The event that celebrated the harvest, the spirits, and the dances. It was the most important event of the year. Every year, Akosua danced, and her performance was the highlight. But this year, Akosua's body was not cooperating. She had been feeling weak. Her legs had been shaking uncontrollably during her private practices, and the festival was just a few days away. The night before the festival, Akosua sat in front of her mirror, the flickering light from a single candle casting long shadows over her face. She could see the lines of age in her eyes, the tiredness in her smile. But when she closed her eyes, she could still hear the drums, still feel the rhythm deep within her bones. That night, her thoughts were interrupted by Afia, who entered the room quietly. Mama, Afia said softly, I don't want you to hurt yourself. Please, you have given enough. Akosua looked at her daughter, then turned her gaze back to the reflection in the mirror. I am not done yet, Afia, she said, her voice firm yet filled with sorrow. You think I am too old, but you do not know what it feels like to carry the weight of these dancers in your blood. This is who I am, the last dance. On the day of the festival, the village square was alive with activity. The children played, the elders shared stories, and the men set up the drums. The air was thick with anticipation. As the sun began to set, Akosua stood behind the stage, wearing her traditional dance attire, bright cloth wrapped around her waist, beads and cowrie shells adorning her neck and her feet bare against the earth. When the drums began, Akosua's heart leaped. She stepped forward, her feet moving instinctively. The crowd parted as she moved into the center of the square. The villagers fell silent, watching her as they always had. But this time, Akosua's movements were slower, less fluid, as the pain in her body became undeniable. But she did not stop. The rhythm of the drums flowed through her, and Akosua danced with all the strength she had left. She danced not for the praise or for the crowd, but for herself. With each movement, she told the story of her life, of her youth, of her struggles, of the beauty and power of the dance. Her body may have been aging, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. And when the music came to an end, Akosua stood tall, her chest heaving, her breath shallow, but a smile on her face. The crowd erupted in applause, but it was not the same applause as before. This time it was filled with reverence. They knew this was her last dance. The reflection. That evening, after the festival, Akosua sat outside her home, staring at the stars. Afia sat beside her. You were amazing, Mama, she said softly. You didn't need to prove anything. Akosua smiled and shook her head. No, Afia, I didn't do it for them. I did it for me. In that moment, Akosua realized that she didn't need the applause anymore. She had danced for herself, for the woman she had always been, and for the joy that the dance brought her. She had passed on her legacy to the younger dancers, but she had also shown them that sometimes the greatest victory lies in accepting the seasons of life, knowing when to dance and when to step back. Akosua's legacy lived on long after the festival, not just through her dances, but through the way the village looked at aging. They learned that, like the rhythms of the drums, life has its own tempo, sometimes slow, sometimes fast, but always worth dancing to. As the days passed, Akosua retired from her role as the village's main dancer, passing the torch to Afia and the younger women. She still danced, but only for herself, under the moonlight, where her movements were free and no longer bound by the expectations of others. Her story became one told for generations to come, a reminder of the power of the dance and the wisdom that comes with embracing life's inevitable changes.